Gun grabbers are at it again, and always they go out on social media and they make fools of themselves because they can't formulate a consistent argument. And the reason why is they don't know what they're talking about. This is Giffords of Giffords Courage. Gabby Gifford, she was shot many years ago and she started this foundation and she got on Twitter and she's made an absolute fool of herself. Let's go ahead and read this. Books belong in schools? Critical race theory belongs in schools. Gee, I thought that was a right-wing myth. The word gay belongs in schools. Guns do not. Oh, okay, so let's see. She followed that one up with another one. And I say she, who knows? I don't know who's actually tweeting this, but whatever. For years, the gun lobby has pushed policies to arm teachers and allow other adults. I wonder why she's not telling you which other adults she's referring to. You'll see why in a moment. To carry guns on K-12 campuses. If you want to learn more about why that's a bad idea, here's a list of every incident of guns mishandled by adults in schools. Guess what? We're going to read the list. We're not just going to scroll down and go, oh my gosh, there are so many. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
Link, and by the way, the teacher they show there, is she not the poster child for the anti-gun, gun-grabbing movement? She wouldn't know one end of a gun from another, but that's okay. We're not here to pick on her. All right, every incident of mishandled guns in schools. And again, they're going to talk about these other adults. We'll see here who we're talking about. Armed adults frequently mishandle their guns in schools. Keeping kids safe means keeping guns off K-12 campuses. Okay, now, who are these armed adults? Well, obviously, teachers is one of those that they're going to be worried about. And you may think, well, it must be parents too. You're right. They're worried about parents having guns. But there's another target. Hang on. Our comprehensive analysis finds that there have been nearly 100 publicly reported incidents of mishandled guns at schools in the last 5 years. 5 years. Now, how many is 100? Well, the first thing you have to think about if you're a critical thinker is how many schools are there? And it turns out 131,000. So 131,000 schools over 5 years, and they've had nearly 100 incidences. That doesn't sound like a lot. But we move on. For years, the gun lobby has pushed policies to arm teachers and allow other adults to carry guns on K-12 campuses. And at this point, you got to be thinking, they're not telling you who these other adults are for a reason. Arming teachers is an incredibly unpopular proposition. I don't care. What matters is whether it's effective. And I'm not saying it is, but it shouldn't come down to popularity. Opposed by 7 out of 10 teenagers, like I care. All right, let's move on. A study published in March 2019 found no evidence that the presence of resource officers in schools lessened the severity of school shooting incidents. So who are these other adults? Cops. They don't want armed school resource officers on campus. But gee, weren't a lot of them complaining that the school resource officer wasn't available during that last shooting incident in Texas? What was the big deal there? The SRO didn't do what we hired him to do. He should have been there protecting the kids. He wasn't there. We needed him. He let us down. And they're saying here, well, we don't want him anyway. They don't want any SROs on campuses anywhere. So which is it? That's the left. Can't make up their mind. Let's read on. And there is no evidence that armed teachers would be any more effective. In fact, a robust body of public health research strongly suggests armed teachers would not effectively deter violence. On the contrary, they would likely increase, rather than decrease, students' exposure to gun violence in schools. All right, so let's get on to what they're working on. To catalog the risk guns in schools pose to student safety, we conducted a systematic review of publicly reported incidents involving mishandled guns on school campuses. We analyzed data from the Gun Violence Archive since 2014, when their records began, and independently verified each incident. And by the way, this time spans through December 2019. 5 years. Keep that in mind. It says scroll through the comprehensive list, broken down into a few general categories, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing I thought about was, how does my own home state of Oklahoma do? Oklahoma, the greatest state in the Union, the land of milk and honey, gun-loving Oklahoma, where we just shoot out with each other all the time because we have that permitless carry. Remember, when we introduced permitless carry in November 2019, it was to lead to all kinds of carnage. Oh my God, people were going to be shooting at each other for no reason at all. It was going to be mayhem. In here, we have at least 2 years of permitless carry cataloged here in this report. 5 years in total, but 2 years permitless carry. So, with all that permitless carry, carnage, OK Corral, Dodge City, how many incidences happened in Oklahoma during this span? Well, there's one way to find out. Let's just do a search on the word Oklahoma. Let's check it out. Oklahoma, 2. Let that soak in. Yeah. 5 years. Probably the most gun-loving state in the country. And we've had 2 incidences. Now, how many of these incidences occurred after they enacted permitless carry? Well, we can look at these incidences and find out. Here's one, Mustang High School in Mustang. It's near Oklahoma City. A gun was found in an unattended bag in the media center of a high school. The bag belonged to an employee of the school. No shots fired. And that was January 17th, 2019, long before the permitless carry law was signed. Well, long before months, but it certainly was before permitless carry. So let's go to the next one. Lower Elementary School, Grove, Oklahoma. And it says here, a parent waiting in the pickup line at school unintentionally shot himself while in his vehicle. He wasn't on campus. I mean, he was technically on campus with his car, but he's in his car waiting to pick up his kid, probably fumbling around for his car keys or something, and the gun went off. He posed no risk to those kids at the school. And they included it. This is January 21st, 2021, and this would count as part of the permitless carry era. 1 incident. 2 years. How many schools? Nearly 4,000. And according to the Giffords Foundation, oh, this is just like the OK Corral. So, we're going to go down and read some of these entries and find out, is Giffords trying to snow us a little? All right, let's take a look. Oh, before I forget, of these 100 or so incidences, 45 involved the school resource officer or a deputy. guns left accessible to children. Now, the idea behind this is that this gun was left laying around and a child could have picked it up and done something horrible with it, right? Not exactly. Let's go ahead and read a little bit. Okay, at Starkey Elementary School, a teacher was arrested for bringing a gun to school and keeping it in her bag. No shots fired, no indication whatsoever that students had any access to that gun. A substitute teacher, which is not really a teacher, but okay, was arrested after telling another staff member that he had a gun in his briefcase. No shots fired. Again, no indication that students had any access to that gun. Well, here's an interesting one. In San Jose, by the way, San Jose, probably the most gun-grabbing city in the country. All right, and I have another video on why I say that, but whatever the case. A teacher was arrested at school for an alleged road rage incident that escalated into a strong-arm robbery when he forcibly took the victim's cell phone. During the arrest, officers found a loaded handgun in the teacher's bag. No indication whatsoever that that gun was accessible to students. But think about the inanity of including this one. This was a robbery. This was also a very strange one. A substitute teacher brought an unloaded gun, not loaded, no bullets. What's the danger? To school in her purse, where it was seen by several students. No shots fired. It's against the law, but it posed no risk to students. A substitute teacher left a gun in a vehicle. It was seen by students. No shots fired. Almost certainly the vehicle was locked. So students didn't have access to that gun, but they included it anyway. Why? Gotta pump those numbers up. A school resource officer left a loaded handgun in a school restroom. Yeah, that's pretty bad. A kid could have picked up that gun and done something terrible with it, right? No doubt about it. However, the same people that are going into conniptions over something like that probably had no problem with her. Now, who is she? Well, let's read the headline. Police chief loses weapon in California restaurant restroom. I did a video on this about a year ago. This was in San Luis Obispo, California. She is the chief of police. She went into a restroom, left her handgun in there. Then, to make matters worse, when somebody took it, she didn't tell anybody, and she instead went out looking for it. So she didn't report it. And she kept her job. And why did she keep her job? I mean, leaving a handgun in a bathroom is bad. It's really bad when you're the police chief. And even worse when you don't report it so that your little minions can go out and find the gun before it hurts somebody. Why did she keep her job? That's why. And I don't want anybody telling me I'm wrong. You know damn well why they kept her. She later moved on to some other agency. But I am sure that there are plenty of people who are aghast at this news that an SRO left his handgun in a school restroom, but defend her. Well, they should give her a second chance. Anybody could do that. I mean, come on. Give me a break. A student brought a gun to school, which ended up in the possession of a teacher. The teacher confiscated it. The teacher hid the gun in her desk overnight. No shots fired. Again, no indication that students had access to it. Now, she should have turned it into the police. Obviously, she didn't do everything right. But again, this was about how the horrors of having adults with guns raises the danger of students. And this section was about students having access to guns. There's no indication that the students had access to it. Now, here's an interesting example. An 8th grade student stole an unloaded .38 caliber gun from an officer's car in the school parking lot after the officer asked the student to retrieve another item. The gun was later found in the school cafeteria. All right? Irresponsible, right? Nobody's going to defend the cop in this. Having a student get into your car when you have guns in there? Ridiculous, right? But My question would be to the people who thought to include this was, when you do have an active shooter, who are you going to call? These guys? If they're that irresponsible to the point where you're putting them in here, should you be calling them out when somebody goes and gets deranged on a school campus? Okay, this category, guns discharged unintentionally. And a lot of these are cops. But again, are we supposed to like SROs or not? If you're in elementary school, do you want an SRO or not? Make up your mind. But to sit here and list a whole bunch of incidences involving SROs unintentionally discharging their guns and then turn around and saying, well, we need more SROs on campus is a little bit inconsistent. And if you don't want SROs on campus, then what are you telling us about the Texas shootings? What's your opinion there? A parent waiting in the pickup line at school unintentionally shot himself while in his vehicle. Again, I read this one before. He's in his car. So let's take a look at this one. A Mesquite police officer assigned to a high school unintentionally discharged his handgun while inspecting it. Alrighty, you don't want adults carrying guns, right? Okay, so you don't want concealed carry for average citizens, right? So are you wanting to disarm cops too? And if you're wanting to disarm cops, then who are you going to rely on to combat crime? And if you don't want to disarm cops, why are you putting this one in here as an example of an irresponsible adult? According to this, I can't trust the police any more than I can trust the average citizen. A false threat led to a brief lockdown at a middle school. While investigating the scene, an officer's gun unintentionally discharged. All right. They're probably under a lot of pressure. Things happen. Are you suggesting that we cannot have these people going to campus when we have a lockdown because they're too irresponsible? I mean, you're not going to call the police? According to the stories you're telling us here, you don't want the police on campus because their guns go off unintentionally, so who are you going to call? A sheriff's deputy shot himself in the leg when responding to a false alarm of shots on campus. So if you hear shots on campus, according to what you're listing here, we don't want those sheriff deputies anywhere around. They're too irresponsible with guns. Oh, this one's funny. Patterson Elementary School. A corrections officer unintentionally discharged a weapon in a school parking lot while visiting for a job interview. Probably didn't get the job. All right, we have guns mishandled during discipline. Guns used in times of personal stress or conflict. A father went into a school carrying a firearm in search of another student who was having issues with his daughter. The father left before any confrontation with the student occurred and no shots were fired. Big deal. He was probably a concealed carry holder. And yeah, he can't have a gun on campus, but I don't think that his carrying of the gun endangered anybody. Oh, I love this one. McNair Elementary School. Two moms pulled out their guns during an argument outside of a Hazelwood Elementary School during drop-off one morning. Oh, that must have been a hell of a fight. Wished I could have been there to see it. Well, from a safe distance. A father stormed onto a school bus with a loaded pistol and threatened the bus driver and several students. Okay, but does this have anything to do with having armed adults on campus? Now, this is a good one. In Bayonne, the head coach of an ice hockey team gained possession of an assistant coach, New Jersey State Trooper's gun and pointed it at two unknown individuals during practice. Yeah, I bet those spectators didn't screw around and taunt that dude anymore, huh? A principal resigned, walked out to his truck in the school's parking lot, and shot himself in the head. I don't think I would chalk this one up to irresponsible gun handling. I think that's just lunacy. Other incidents of guns brought onto campus, and oh, this is where it gets really good. Because remember, we have to pump up those numbers. We got to make it look as nasty as we can because we're trying to take people's rights away. So what we'll do is we'll just do about anything to be able to put something on the list. Let's read. A mother carried a gun on her hip while checking her child out of the school. No threats made or shots fired. I don't see an issue there. Hazelwood Southeast Middle School. Hazelwood again. A parent exited their vehicle with a gun after seeing a fight between students during dismissal time. The gun was visible but was not brandished and no shots were fired. Okay, he probably was just carrying the gun and when he got out, you could see it. All right, no indication that the gun posed any threat to anybody. But we'll put it on there anyway. A middle school teacher was arrested after a student reported seeing him with a firearm in his waistband. Responding officers also discovered that the teacher was in possession of a vaporizer and a THC vaporizer cartridge. No comment. A school resource officer was shot in the foot after his firearm discharged while confronting a school custodian who was making threats with a knife. So we have a custodian threatening people with a knife. The SRO pulls his gun out like he's supposed to, and they're chalking that one up as, well, we can't have adults with guns. They're irresponsible in the way they handle them. Yeah, I mean, seriously, that's what they're claiming here. A parent had a loaded gun unsecured under the driver's seat of his car as he waited to pick up his child. No shots fired. Really? A parent brought a gun to school hidden under his shirt as he waited to pick up his child. A school resource officer called the police after noticing the gun. Again, no indication whatsoever that any kids were ever in danger. A school employee self-reported having a gun on campus. Officers were not aware of any threats made by the employee and no shots were fired. Okay, so what happened was, I can almost guarantee that he had a gun in a briefcase or something and he forgot it was in there and he got to campus and said, oh no, I'm not supposed to have this. So what does he do? He self-reports it. And they're using that as a reason why you can't trust adults with guns on campus. A teacher brought a loaded Smith & Wesson .38 caliber revolver onto school property. No shots fired. Well, the whole deal here is about whether if we allow teachers to bring .38 caliber revolvers onto campus, whether they will handle it properly. There is no indication that the teacher mishandled the weapon. Why is it on this list? You know why. A Buffalo Common Council member brought a loaded gun to school while attending an event. The principal agreed to store the gun in his office, even though only sworn law enforcement officers are permitted to bring guns onto campuses. No shots fired. So again, a council member shows up and realizes that he's carrying a gun he's not supposed to. So what does he do? He goes to the principal and says, hey, can we put this somewhere? I can't have it here. So the principal locks it up in his office and then probably turns it in later to the police. Big deal. The teacher was placed on administrative leave after school administrators discovered that he kept a gun in the classroom. No shots fired. And again, the whole question is whether we can trust teachers to keep guns in their classroom. A student noticed the bus driver had concealed handgun. Again, no indication that anybody was in any danger. A student allegedly spotted a firearm inside a teacher's vehicle. A loaded gun and a box of ammo were recovered from the car. But again, the teacher did not bring the gun onto school property. I'm not saying that the teachers did everything right here. I'm just saying, though, is that as far as them handling the gun around kids, I don't see how this has any bearing on that. I like this one though. A middle school basketball coach brought a handgun to school, which he showed to his team during practice. I can just see it now. You see this handgun? The next time you guys don't hustle, I'm going to introduce you to the business end of my 38. Oh, man. So, again, we have a total of 100 incidences. Most of them, or at least almost half of them, involve the cops. And this is over a 5-year span with 130,000 schools. And this is all they could find. There are probably more incidences in church than in schools. So, again, Oklahoma, supposedly the Wild West, permitless carry, and 2 incidences in 5 years. So, Giffords, you can kiss my ass. You're liars, and no one should ever trust a damn thing you say. Like my video, subscribe to my channel.